Ooh, I haven't done a companion video in a while. In preparing to cover Skin Deep, I went back and played through all the other Blendo games I have in my Steam library, as well as whatever older stuff from Brendan Chung would run without having to install other games. Besides Gravity Bone and 30 Flights, the other Blendo game in my library is Quadrilateral Cowboy. It's a 2016 hacking game where you take on jobs that require you to break into secured spaces with the use of your cyber deck and assorted accessories. The game teaches you a simplified scripting language to disable or enable machinery. Even if Skin Deep hadn't ever released, I've always wanted to cover Quadrilateral Cowboy, but its premise scared me off. I've never done programming outside of a high school class, and barely recall what I learned from there. Luckily, I didn't have to know much about the field to play QD. Okay, so for some reason, I abbreviated Quadrilateral Cowboy as QD in my script instead of QC, and rather than changing it up to avoid any further confusion, I just kept referring to it as that for the rest of the video. The start of the game doesn't even involve the cyber deck, but about the heist required to build it. The first thing you learn is how to interact with the world. You learn to identify I/O ports that you can access with your handheld device to open skylights. This is also where the game primes you to understand the importance of timing by only giving you a 3-second window to enter those skylights. Once you've got what you need, you retrace your steps to leave the mission area, and this sets the pacing for how every job plays out, almost like an MGS5 mission. Once you've assembled your cyber deck, then the real game begins. You don't actually perform heists, but run computer simulations to work out the process on how to perform the heist. This is the game's conceit for why you're able to replay jobs indefinitely. Each job has 3 tasks, and the challenge increases for each task. Each task teaches you a little bit more about the rules of the game and the scripting language. Toggling between tasks made me think about how Thief treated increasing difficulty challenges, not by putting more enemies on the map, but by increasing the amount of money you needed to steal to clear the mission. Once you've cleared all 3 tasks, you go back to the drawing board to execute the job, and the game skips ahead to the next job's planning phase. I'm actually very surprised at how well QD holds your hand as you learn how to play the game. First, you learn how to open a door with the cyber deck. You need to pop open the deck, log on to the local network, issue the command with the scripting language, and then execute the command by hitting enter. Then you'll learn how to open a door with a 3-second timer. If you instruct the door to stay open for longer than 3 seconds, you'll set off the alarm. But putting down and picking up the cyber deck eats up time, so how do you manage that in 3 seconds? Well, instead of hitting enter, you click mouse 1 to execute the command and pick up the cyber deck all in the same action. This tutorial is the foundation upon which the rest of the gameplay develops. You learn how to queue up commands, leave the deck, interact with an object, and then execute the command when the timing is just right. Then you learn to queue up multiple commands simultaneously. Then you learn how to issue a delay between multiple commands to create a sequence. After each job, you head to the local black market to purchase new gear. When you get a new tool, you also get a brief tutorial on how to use it before taking it with you on the next job. Some tools help you reach areas you normally couldn't, and some tools require you to control them like you would the local network. If you have to adjust a remote operating tool's position or the direction it's facing, you need to connect it to a monitor. If you're stuck or forget how to use anything in your kit, you can press tab to pull up the instruction manual and refresh your memory. The first few pages of the manual always focus on the current job's objectives, and this is another part of the game that reminds me of Thief's hand-drawn maps. I've said in my Skin Deep video that Blendo Games lets you reuse assets or reference other games in or out of their catalog. The briefcase gun reminds me of the laptop SMG from Perfect Dark, although not as glamorous in execution. I think the idle animation that plays while you're holding the Weevil device is inspired by the Snarks from Half-Life. Also, this only really hits if you played Skin Deep before, but Choo Choo, the cat managing the black market, returns as a crew member you'll rescue as Nina in Skin Deep.
We must save my crew. They captured Engineer Jingle and First Mate Choo Choo.
Oh, Choo Choo! I know that guy!
Midway through the campaign, your company suffers a setback and has to adjust. Instead of the usual hacking gigs, you now have to switch control between 2 members of the team to coordinate your actions. You're still using simulations to plan out heists, but now the gameplay shifts into something akin to the time puzzles in Ratchet & Clank Future, A Crack in Time. You have the option to case a job and fly around the map as if you activated no-clip in a video game. In this mode, you snap pics of key items that add to your intel briefing in your instruction manual. Whether or not you've cased a joint, you switch over to another cyber deck to carry out a specific role. When you've done the objective for that role, you jump out of that deck and go to another deck to carry out the next role. As you switch roles, you'll see ghosts of yourself as the other members of the team performing your past actions. Later jobs will have you alternating between roles as the next phase of the heist plays out. While early game jobs are pretty lax in how long you took to perform them, these jobs are on a timer and put a fire under your ass to jump through all the hoops in time. Eventually, you go back to hacking, but the timing element comes into play with some jobs. I like the shift in focus, but I have to admit that the timer can feel pretty strict if you don't know what you're doing. You can incur penalties on the job by setting off alarms or from taking serious fall damage. There's no real penalty imposed upon you. You can redo any job however many times you'd like. The only thing you have to compete against is yourself, and whether you can pull off a job faster without incurring any penalties. By this point, I could see how Blendo came up with Skin Deep's gameplay following Quadrilateral Cowboy. One of the jobs involves taking an orbital elevator up to a space station hospital. You start off wearing a spacesuit, and your field of view is occluded by the additional HUD elements. Once you go through the airlock, you have to leave your breathing kit at the front door and pick it up on the way out. You only do this for 2 jobs, and I could already tell how cumbersome it was to don off the space gear every time. So I get why Blender decided to do away with the gimmick by giving Nina a 3rd lung for space. The other aspect of QD's gameplay that transferred over to Skin Deep is the fly-through movement while casing a job. Instead of making a pseudo no-clip for Skin Deep, it's the basis for how you move through the vacuum of space while patrolling a ship's exterior. Both space jobs give you a taste of what Blender could do when it came to spaceship designs, so it's nice to see where they started with the concept after playing through its fully realized version. Every so often, you'll get a vignette where you pick up one of your teammates before going to your offices. This is your chance to peek into their lives. For most of the game, you play as Poncho, the computer specialist of the group, and if the photos on the walls are anything to go by, this is the 3rd game I've played that features a Middle Eastern looking woman in a hijab. You also play as Maisie, the engineer of the group, and Lou, the greaser. These home visits remind me of Deus Ex: Mankind Divided. There's a point in the game where Jensen has to break into his commanding officer's apartment to find clues, but you don't have to wait for that story beat to do some B&E. Going through his apartment, you glean bits of info about his life outside of spy work. He's gay, he's married, he has a daughter, they're quarreling over how to raise her. You get the same experience looking at how your friends live. You all went to the same school but for different degrees. You all have interests in different hobbies. Some are living alone and some have partners. The game does this kind of environmental storytelling early on if you snoop around your workspace before jacking in. You'll find a chalkboard where you guys brainstorm the name of your company, across from the pile of rejection letters you sent to various employers. Like Gravity Bone and 30 Flights, there's no spoken dialogue in QD. Well, no understandable spoken dialogue. Everyone talks like an adult in a Charlie Brown cartoon, which prevents you from really knowing what's happening at any given time. That's why you're picking up context clues by examining the environment and looking at what your friends are doing. This kind of storytelling makes Quadrilateral Cowboy's tone feel more reined in compared to Skin Deep's slapstick comedy or 30 Flight's upbeat music video cadence. Maybe it's the art style used in the photographs, but it's like I'm playing a Wes Anderson movie at times with how wistful the game feels. Past the goofy spectacle of using jump pads to travel between buildings or robbing patient brains in a hospital in space, Quadrilateral Cowboy seems to imply that Poncho, Maisie, and Lou are only taking on these jobs because they're the only ones available for their skill sets, if the pile of rejection letters and studio apartment truck houses are anything to go by. Not so much be gay and do crimes, but rather be sustainable by doing crimes. If you want to play something alongside QD to compare notes, I think it would complement a playthrough of Watch Dogs 2. Both games feature a band of hackers using their wits to take on the world. Both games approach hacking from opposite ends of the spectrum, with Watch Dogs simplifying the process into a single button press, while QD emphasizes precision and clarity in your writing to make sure the code executes exactly as you intended. Both games require you to remotely operate some kind of drone to manipulate devices that would be otherwise out of your reach. And again, Watch Dogs favors simplicity and accessibility in control, while QD emphasizes precision and clarity in your writing. At the risk of hitting Quadrilateral Cowboy with a backhanded compliment, it never lives up to the game it could potentially be. Let me explain. Valhalla is a bartending game that's not really about tending bar. You mix drinks, and there are menus that teach you how to mix drinks, but the drinks are a means to get your character to interact with our customers and learn about their lives. There's another version of this game in the multiverse that plays more like Overcooked with liquor, or emphasizes a struggling against poverty part of Jill's life like Papers, Please. But that's not the story it wants to tell. Mixed drinks change lives. If you look for hacking games on Steam, you'll find plenty of them that simulate the experience of cracking a login screen or opening up so many windows. But that's not the story Blendo Games wants to tell. Nothing's stopping you from doing all the tasks in a single run, but nothing's encouraging you to overextend yourself like that either. Like the drinks in Valhalla, the hacking is a means to explore the setting and its characters. You're getting snapshots of Ponchos and her pals' lives, and how they managed to eke out a living, despite all the chips stacked against them. So it's only fitting that the end credits feature snapshots of your team over the years as have kept the company going. It may not be a glamorous life, but you can tell it's full of memories based on all the stuff the Ponchos accumulated. And outside of a spiritual context, isn't that what life is? The stuff you leave behind and the memories attached to that stuff? Play Quadrilateral Cowboy. If you're worried about the scripting language like I was, just take your time and go through the manual, and explore the commands available on every device. This hung me up for several minutes before realizing, but when the manual nests a numerical value between a less than and greater than sign, it wants you to type out just the number and not the symbol surrounding it.